Oh, hi Shady, sorry I'm out of breath. I'm back out here in the bosque, which is the forest that grows here in New Mexico by the river. Oh, I'm really tired. I was just having a wank. I've been wanking out here for over 15 years now. Not non-stop, obviously. That'd be not wanking, running. Been running in the bosque for over 15 years. Not non-stop, obviously. What was that? That's a scary old tree, isn't it? This is Rugby Rant Banter. Top 5 England players in every position, sometimes top 10. If this is your first time watching, you could go back and watch the others. Do you know what though? I've been doing it, I've taken so long to finish this that if you go back, I started it with the back 3. Maybe I started with fullback. I think I did fullback then wing. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just did back 3. I can't remember. If you go back now, it's probably no longer relevant because there's been so much Premiership action. There's been injuries. There's been, you know, rises and falls in certain players' performances. So I'd probably pick different players by now. But we're on to hooker, which is a fun one. It's going to be interesting because we've got some good hookers. And the England captain is currently a hooker. But is he the best hooker in England? Let's find out. I will tell you. So when I do my rankings, I always start at number 1, which seems counterintuitive. Generally, you do a countdown to the best player in each position. But I have found that generally speaking, when you get to number 1, it's a bit of an anticlimax because we tend to agree. Not always, but most of the time we're agreed. Now, at hooker, it's tricky because, as I said, the current England captain is a hooker, Jamie George, of course, but he's not necessarily the best hooker in the country, at least in terms of form. And he's definitely not as good as he used to be. I think most people would agree Jamie George was probably at his peak in his prime a couple of years ago. That being said, he is still very consistent, does all the basics well, works hard, and is a good leader, and is established. So it's a tricky one for me. A lot of people who listen to my podcast will tell you I quite like the exciting ball-carrying players, especially at hooker. I've been a huge fan of little Harry Thacker for a long time. I really like Ogre of the same team, Bristol Bears, but you'll also know that I, with my famous Shider's touch, destroyed Bristol Bears recently. After they annihilated, was it Leicester? I went on the rampage with my comments about people who doubted Bristol and doubted whether or not their brand of attacking, exciting rugby was good enough to consistently win and actually win a league. And compete with the bigger teams that play a more conservative defensive style of rugby. I very much climbed up on my high horse, high as fuck my horse was, stoned out of its mind. And I rode around laughing at people who had doubted Bristol. And then the next week they lost by a record number of points to Sale, proving that I'm a fucking idiot. Now I can't remember what my point is. Oh yeah, my point is that I'm a sucker for an exciting brand of rugby and an exciting brand of player, and at hooker we got some exciting players. But do you know what, you know, if England are playing today in a World Cup final, who do I want starting in the hooker shirt, the number 2 shirt? It has to be Jamie George, doesn't it? Because I mean, is there anyone else? I mean, if I look at the exciting hookers, and I'll get onto that. Ooh, exciting hookers. They're all quite untested. And they're all a little bit, like, would you trust them in a World Cup final to throw a line out in the dying seconds to win the game, to secure the ball? Not necessarily. I got to go with Jamie George at number 1. Then at number 2, similar situation. You got Luke Cowan-Dickey has kind of stolen the bench slot from the very exciting my ADHD is kicking in. Fucking hell, Saracens took her back up to Jamie George. Look at those cranes. They're big fucking birds, and there's a shit ton of them this time of year in the bosque by the river. I stopped last year, I remember. I was running with my whore ex-girlfriend, and she wasn't my ex-girlfriend at the time, obviously. And there was a ton of these storks, and the noises they were making, it was like a scene from Jurassic Park, if that makes sense. Anyway, did I buy myself enough time for my memory to reboot and remember the hooker at Saracen's that I talk about constantly and I know incredibly well? No, my brain is shut down. Give me 1 second to remember. Look, it took me literally, I pushed pause on the camera and I remembered it's Theo Dan. I hate it when that shit happens. So Theo Dan had been sort of seen, I think we all agreed he was the backup to Jamie George for England, but then Luke Cowan-Dickie came back, mainly because of that consistency. That safety. And I don't like safe options necessarily, but there's a really good argument for Luke Cowan-Dickie now, not just because he's been there and done it and he's got the mental, he's got the mental strength of someone that was #1 in the world at, was it Halo? I don't think it was Halo. Some fucking video game where he was nationally ranked, I think #1 in the world at one point. So he's got that mental fortitude. But not just that, when he was first getting picked ahead of Theo Dan, I wasn't happy with it because I didn't think he was playing that well. But do you know what? This season, he has been playing really well. He's, I don't know if he's back to his absolute best, but he's absolutely good enough to play for England. I said that weird, didn't I? England. But do you know what? Theo Dan is such a wrecking ball, such a dynamic player. I'd have him at second choice. I would. Theo Dan for me. Love Theo Dan. So from there, you got to go Luke Cowan-Dickie third choice because of all the reasons I've said. And now, after that, we're left with some very exciting options. You got Ogre at Bristol and Harry Thacker, who I've mentioned both of. And then, of course, Langdon at Saints is playing really well. Who else is there? You know what? I'm just going to list a few upcoming, exciting, potential players and maybe some players that I've forgotten about right now as you're watching this. But for me, for the 4th and 5th spots, it's between Langdon and Ogre. I do love little Harry Thacker. I say little, he's not that little, he's just more short and stout, isn't he? But he's had a lot of injuries recently and has just not had enough game time to prove himself. Looked really good actually this last weekend for Bristol, but I think Ogre has just had more opportunity to prove himself over this season, and he's looked really good. So it's between him and Langdon, and it's almost too close to call. I think I might just go for Ogre ahead of Langdon just because I think he's just a tiny bit more dynamic. Then again, is Langdon a bit better with his basics? Who's the better scrummager? Who's the better line-out thrower? Maybe Langdon is a little better in that department. No, I'm gonna stick with Ogre in 4th choice, and I'll put Langdon at 5th. So that's my top 5 hookers in the country right now for England. Jamie George at #1, Theo Dan at #2, Luke Cowan-Dickie at 3, Gabriel Ogre at 4, and then Langdon bringing up the rear at 5. Some really good options though, aren't there? No real weaknesses there, and there's some others that I haven't mentioned. So that's it. Let me know if you disagree with me. If you haven't subscribed to my podcast, Rugby Rants Banter, do that right now, you fucking idiot. Like this, subscribe to this. Follow me on Instagram if you like, at Eddie Stevens Massive. Follow me on TikTok if you are a raging homosexual, at Eddie Stevens 0. And that's it. All right, chill. Peace out. I'm gonna do my thing. You do you, because I'm gonna do me. Bye. Right into the dump. You should let it go. I know what you want.